How you doing, Anita? It's great to be talking with you here.
Well, thanks for having me, Mike.
One of the things that I've got to have an answer to,
Sure.
right? And it comes down to is that one defining moment in October at the first public forum.
Yep.
You stood up, and there was a group of us went, and it reminded me of the female character in The Natural, where she stands up, and all of a sudden Robert Redford's character starts hitting home runs like nobody's business. And we went, who is that woman? So why did you show up that October? And then equally important is, why did you get up and start speaking?
So that October, you're referring to the school committee, I think, open forum. I was really mad. I had gone to the FinCom the week before. I had started looking through all the financial statements, gone through the audits, started reading the minutes. And that's when I realized nothing made sense. We were looking at financial statements from one month to the other, and the numbers flip-flopped. Now we know why, hindsight's 2020. But at that moment, I was just angry. And I was angry at one of the comments a school committee member had said, that they had been transparent, that they had always provided financial statements. And that's fine and good. You can throw a bunch of numbers up there, but if they don't mean anything, and you don't put any context around them, if you don't bridge them, you don't, make people understand from point A to point P, all you're doing is just throwing numbers. They don't make sense. You can't run a school department that way, and that just infuriated me at that moment.
Well, in that moment, during that meeting, there were a lot of parents who were going up, and that's what we were hearing. Oh, it's on the website. Oh, we're transparent. Right? And they didn't have the data, and then you got up and you had this one comment, and you mentioned it before. Content without context is useless.
Right.
Is that what motivated you to get up and speak?
Yeah. That was it. It was just the numbers. They kept on saying, "Well, we were transparent," and they weren't. They just threw up numbers. So for me, it was really I wanted to know in that moment where, because we didn't even know where and what caused that huge discrepancy.
And what made you so qualified or think that you could ask those questions?
That's what I do for a living, right? I analyze data. I help companies, set the metrics in place to manage their business. Because a lot of companies, there's a lot of data out there nowadays, right? We're collecting data all over the place. But you don't need to look at everything to help you drive your business to achieve successful results. What you need to be watching are the key drivers of your business, and that's what I do. I go in, I help CEOs figure what's important for their business, how do we measure it, how do we monitor it, and how do we adjust the company to take advantage of those market conditions.
And that's what really separated you from all the parents, because in that one evening, you spoke for all the parents that were frustrated. And that's really what set you apart from everyone that evening, and that's when the holy cow. And so what made you decide to run?
A lot of things. At that moment, I think that was pretty obvious to me that they really needed someone with my type of background, and
so
that I would be perfect.
Tell me a little bit about that background.
Well, like I said, I typically go into companies. I'm either going in fixing their current processes, helping the CEO achieve their desired results, market success, and I go in, analyze, what the current processes are, what the financial information is, and I help them kind of, streamline that and figure out what's important for them, and fix the processes that may be broken, and help them be efficient in managing their business.
That makes you sound uniquely qualified to serve on a school committee.
I've been doing it for a long time, so I've fine-tuned those skills quite a bit.
So to summarize, is you spoke for all the parents that night that were frustrated. You had facts and figures that we didn't have, and then you decided to run because you saw that need. Pretty good summary.
Yeah, and I feel that what makes a great school committee is everybody bringing their unique backgrounds, and having different backgrounds really, I think, makes it quite a successful committee.
Now let's backtrack a little bit. I understand you're a lifelong Chelmsford resident. Tell me about your background and how you grew up.
Sure. So I was born and raised in Chelmsford. My parents immigrated here from Italy. They settled in Chelmsford. They, initially didn't speak that much English. So when I was a little kid, I didn't really learn English until I went to kindergarten. I
I can relate to that. My parents were immigrant. I didn't speak English until I went to kindergarten.
Yeah, so I did go into Title I. I remember learning how to read on the old DOS type, I think they were Wang computers at Westland School. And then from there, I always struggled. I wasn't, your A student, because English was always a little difficult for me. Went through the school system, went from Westlands. I spent a little time at Center, then to McCarthy, and then at the high school. And it really wasn't until my senior year at the high school that there was a board right next to I think it was the elevator, where they would start putting students' names in the colleges they were accepted to. And I remember, going by that board, and more names are going up, more and more colleges, and some kids had a nice long list, and everybody was very proud. It was one of those great, powerful, moments. And I felt like I wasn't part of it. And I went to a teacher and I asked, so what's this college thing all about? And he kind of talked to me about it. And I decided at that moment, maybe I'll give it a try. So I took my SATs at the very last moment, applied to UMass Lowell, gratefully got accepted, and that really changed my life. That's where I met my husband. And I really, picked up the whole finance. I double majored in finance and accounting. I later did go back to UMass to get my MBA as well, but that really set the course for who I am today.
So would you say your experience in the Chelmsford schools even back then was a good one?
Oh, it was wonderful. I'm grateful that I went into an environment that really celebrated, children's successes and encouraged that. Being a student that was always kind of, just in the middle of the road, not the A student, but it still embraced me, and they encouraged me, and I got a great education.
So now, how about today's Chelmsford schools? Do you have any experience with it?
Yeah, I've got 2 children, Dante and Andre. One is at the McCarthy, Dante's at the McCarthy, Andre's at Center. I'm still getting a great experience. I mean, the teachers are wonderful, the principals are great, the curriculum. I'm really happy. I mean, that's why we live in Chelmsford. And I'm happy in the education that they've gotten.
So now, when we look at, now we're fast forwarding to today. Mm-hmm. So over the last 6 months, what have you experienced? What do you see needs fixing? Because it sounds like you're a fixer.
I'm a fixer, and so I think we've come a long way. We've brought in a consultant, Mr. Frank Antonelli. He's really done quite a bit of work, and being in his position at in other companies, I understand the amount of work that has done, and it's he's done a tremendous amount of work. But there still needs to be we still have to move forward. We're not there yet. We need to make sure we have all the policies in place, that we're following the policies, and we're checking to make sure that those policies and processes are being followed. Having the principals now develop a budget and have that rolled up, that's a great thing, because that helps the principals develop those budgeting skills and understanding, living within their means. But we're getting there.
So now we talked about you have a very unique skill set relative to other members on the committee. You see yourself as a financial fixer. But you also you come out of the advertising world also, right?
Yep.
So you really understand the role of communications.
Absolutely.
So we're talking about certain priorities, whether it's communicating, whether it's fixing. How would you define your role when you get elected to the school committee? What do you want to be known as on the committee?
So as part of my experience is I'm in the boardroom, dealing and presenting and communicating financial information to my board members. So you have to be transparent. It's not about being on budget or off budget, but it's really about the why. And how do we move from point A to point B? I mean, no one will create the perfect budget. You're not going to hit it, right, 100%, because no one has that foresight. But you may be, ahead of budget on one line item, behind budget on another. Something may pop up, and it's how quickly you can react to those changes. Really help you succeed, and that's the same with the school budget, right? We may have a surprise expense that we weren't forecasting, but can we pull back on another expense so we don't go over the overall budget? Something that wouldn't impact, or we wouldn't notice the impact.
So given your financial background and having done it for what, some 20 odd years
Yep.
now, you'd be really in a prime position to be able to spot something happening earlier than, say, some of the other school committee members, right?
I do think that I could spot it fairly quickly.
Now, let's talk about the communications, right? Because one of the things that you talked about, the lack of transparency.
Yep.
They've really stopped communicating. And you talk about the importance of communicating with all your constituencies. So you have the taxpayers that are footing the bill for the schools.
Yep.
You have the parents that have kids in schools. What do you see that's really important? How do we reach out in your mind?
Well, one of the things I like them to institute is, and it's a nice way to reach to the parents, right? Parents are paying these activity fees. And, they write a check at the beginning of the year. I've done it, other parents have done it, but we really don't know where our money's going. And what I like to see is kind of at the end of the year, a thank you note. It's a nice way to reach back. Dear parents, thank you for your activity fee. This is where we spent the money. And it's just being, and it's fairly easy to institute. It doesn't involve a lot of extra work. It's a report you can run out of this, your financial system. But it's, again, it's giving that goodwill back, and it's a thank you, and then just providing a little statement, an appendix of this is where we spent this money. And you never know. A parent may say, "Hey, oh, look at that line item. I can probably help them and get that cheaper," or something. It brings that communication back to the school system. It gets, the parents maybe a little bit more aware. It might spark some interest and get them, more involved. Who knows? But again, always reaching out and just presenting, the facts.
Now, also, there used to be a number of public forums. Are you a fan of those, where the school committee reaches out to the community for a special night 2 or 3 times a year, just like that October day?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a great way to, hear input, hear ways to improve, and we do that in corporate all the time. We have employee-wide meetings, right, where people can, we present where we stand, but the employees can start providing feedback, and it's, you're all in it together. It's not the CEO or not just the administration that's driving the school. It's that public input is extremely important.
Now, the taxpayers, whether they have children in the school or not, are footing the bill.
Yes.
What kind of promise can you make them when you get elected to the school committee?
Well, again, I've got parents who, still live in town and who are on
So they're one of those taxpayers that need to be convinced.
Yeah, and they're on a fixed income, right? So they're very cognizant of their tax rate and how much they're paying. It's very important to them. So it's always, again, I think it's making sure that we're maximizing our taxpayer dollars. No one wants to hear of waste, taking advantage of market conditions, meaning if back in 2008, 2009, the economy took a downturn, that would have been a great time for us probably to get out of Kelly Services and maximize and bring substitutes in directly and not have to pay that premium. And every dollar counts. So you have to always be aware of the market conditions, your contracts. When you make a decision today, it may be the right decision for today, but it may not be the right decision from maximizing your dollars tomorrow. So you shouldn't be afraid to re-look at that, reevaluate that. And again, maximizing and making sure that we're spending every dollar wisely.
So now we've covered the taxpayers. Yep. They deserve to have every dollar spent wisely. And you've got some plans and ideas just in the last minute or so that we've covered it. Now, we also have a constituency, the parents, who believe their fees are just another form of a tax.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that? Do you have any ideas?
Again, I really would like to start going through. I think part of the problem we're coming out of is I don't think we really knew where we were spending our money, and I think that's a pretty fair statement to say at this point. And I think we need to reevaluate everything's on the table. We need to look through everything because we really need to. Those activity fees are becoming barriers to entry for some students. Case in point, when I was in high school, my parents, were not a wealthy family. I was kind of one of those kids that could have gone either way, not gone to college, and what have you. And I joined the band. Had my parents had to pay an activity fee, I probably would not have joined the band. But I did, and I got into a circle of friends who were, again, doing this college thing, really bright, and I got kind of swept away with it. It was all that culture, and that was great because that was a great place for me at that age to fall into. So we really need to look at these activity fees and, and see if there's a way that we can cut back on them. Again, just, we have to start with, the basics. We finally cleaned up the books. We're now finally reporting things, but there's still a long way to go.
That's really great to hear, because it seems in the last few years the activity fees have become institutionalized.
Right.
They've been taken for granted. And as a parent myself, because I don't like being taken for granted, it's very clear from your positions that they're an integral part.
These activities are important for our kids to be well-rounded. Whatever interest, whether it's athletics or music and fine arts, it is important for them to be part of it. And we shouldn't exclude anyone.
Well,
or make it difficult, sorry.
You've done some volunteer work in the schools, haven't you?
Yes, yeah. So I've been I try to, volunteer as much as I can. Education's extremely important to me. So, I volunteer when they're in elementary school. I've done room moms for both my kids, which means, you organize all the, extra activities, whether it's Halloween parties or Valentine's Day parties or, first day of spring or whatever, right? And you get, you go in and you do crafts, arts and crafts with the kids. Or, I try to go on field trips. Field trips are, the best, those are awesome, and my kids always ask me to volunteer. So I do take a day off to go on those field trips with the kids when I can.
So, and that also gets you a good sense of how, just by doing those volunteer efforts, the interaction of teachers with the students, you get a sense of how the students are feeling.
Yeah.
And then it just rolls it up as you're getting a sense of how parents are feeling because you're in there with them.
Yep.
That's great stuff. So now, as we go through more into the campaign, coming out of the corporate world, there's that one adage of, what do you do in your first 90 days, your first 120 days? How do you kickstart your role on the school committee? Do you have any ideas, thoughts of what would you do in your first 90 to 120 days? In your first 3 or 4 months, basically.
So, I probably approach it the same way I approach my, any type of, when I'm going into a new company, is really look at the financials, scrub down the financials, get a full understanding of the metrics that are driving them and the processes that are currently working and not working, and see where we can start, driving some efficiencies. Again, similar to, anybody's, whether it's a home budget or a corporate budget or, even, a school budget, there's only so much money. So we need to maximize and, again, really just make sure that we're on top of all of that. So that would be my, probably the first 90 days. I also want to make sure that there's, we're communicating that, putting in that letter back to the parents on, this is where we spent your activity fees, this is where this is going. Really making sure that we're capturing the proper, have the proper set of accounts to capture the information and to report back.
Now, part of it, I'm really hung up on this communications things. I think it's a great idea, the app. Letting the parents know the status of various activities, whether it's who's going to what college, because that motivated you to start applying, how we score on MCAS. Isn't that part of the communications, letting parents and the taxpayers know what they're getting for their dollar?
It's very important, right? It's extremely important, and I think it's motivating too, because it brings a sense of pride, right? And everybody now is involved in it. And we all, one of the great things about Chelmsford is, this whole, celebrating people's success and the kids' success. And I think, I really think whether you have kids in the system or not, like my, my parents, there's a lot of people here who have grandkids in the system. So they are very proud of that, and we should be celebrating that and communicating that, and we shouldn't be afraid of it. And then there are times when things don't work out as well, and that's okay too. We shouldn't hide that. We should just, tell folks how we plan on fixing it, whatever the, the issue is. It's like, okay, this came up, and we need to fix it, and this is how we're going to do it. And that gives people comfort, because they know that things are being taken care of properly.
Yeah. I really believe, I believe in that part. There's been a lot said in the community about the turf fields, and that's sports related. Yeah. And I know in talking to you in the past, the theater arts.
Yep.
You were in band
Yep.
yourself. There's lots of people that are in chorus. Giving back to the community this is my idea, I'm not saying it's a good one, is why not have an open theater night for the taxpayers?
Yeah.
Show that we have a great theater program or a great arts program. Can you talk about the arts? And
I mean, you know, the arts are fantastic. I know, you know, the high school does a lot. They just did, I think, you know, the top talent teachers, and and I've unfortunately wasn't able to watch it, but I did see it online. And those are things that the community should be going to, and we should be opening it up to the community. We do, and I encourage the community just to go and look at these performances because they're fantastic.
Now we're going to go back to, we're getting close to wrapping up at some point in time here, is we talk about priorities, right?
Yep.
We talked about the first 90 to 120 days.
Mm-hmm.
When you decided to run, from the moment you decided to run to the current date, have you seen things change? Have you changed your mind? Can you talk about where you see your top 2 or 3 priorities as going forward as the new member on the school committee?
Like I said, Frank Antonelli has done a fantastic job in getting us from where we were to where we are today with, the budget and what have you. We're going to continue to have pressure from, unfunded mandates. So that's always going to be, we're going to have to always take care of that. From a priorities perspective, really, like, I want to start, understanding, what I always call it, because I'm financial background, so I can go from one industry to another, and I like to do that because I love to understand that industry, and I'm really excited. I know the finance part, like I know I can go in and fix that, but what I'm really excited about is learning the educational piece, learning about that. That to me is a challenge that I'm looking forward to getting more information and more educated on myself.
Now, you had mentioned right before we started about the importance of the role of the business manager.
Yes.
And you wanted to be involved in that. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean, ideally, I would love to be part of the hiring process. I've been hiring financial individuals, operational individuals for the past 20 plus years. I hire A players. I know what to look for. I know what makes an A player. I've given my advice as much as I can. I've been as vocal as I can about it. But I, strongly believe A players hire A players, and I want to be part of that.
So we have the importance of the business manager. You really position yourself based on your background as being the fixer.
Yep.
And right now we need a lot of fixing.
Yep.
Not only from a communication standpoint, but also from just a financial standpoint. We talked a little bit about your role in strategic planning and matching the finances against the strategic plan.
Yep.
How do you feel we've done there? Can you add value to that?
I think, yeah. So I think that's probably the biggest disconnect, right? And that needs to be kind of bridged back. And I think, again, the first step is, let's start reporting correctly. Let's start understanding, gathering our information. And we've, unfortunately, that was a big mess. Then let's start putting the strategic goals down, right? And now let's map and put dollars around, how do we get to achieve those strategic goals? And that's, that's a typical, budgeting process planning step. Unfortunately, everything's been kind of, I think this past year, a little bit behind the 8 ball, and we're trying to jam everything and understand where we even stand from a budget, how much it costs to operate our school system. And I think, once we get that and we're comfortable with that, then it's really starting to apply those budgets to the strategic plan and understanding where we want to be and how we get there.
So that's the context and the content issue that you've described in the past.
Yep.
So you're bringing the expertise of being able to fix.
Yep.
So that makes you the right person. And right now we desperately need that fixing in terms of communications.
Yep.
We also need it in terms of the finance piece. So it kind of makes you like the right person at the right time for the school committee. In closing, do you have anything else that you can add?
No, I think you pretty much summed it right up, and I appreciate the time, and I appreciate, a vote or consideration for a vote for school committee.
So thank you very much, and I wish you the best, and look forward to seeing you on the school committee and starting enacting some of the things that we really need.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Have a nice day.
Thank you. You too.